Welcome to the Life Unscripted Podcast with Rosabel, the place where genuine conversations meet inspiring stories, personal growth, and a dash of humor. I'm Rosabel, your host, inviting you to embrace life's unpredictable journey. Celebrate your unique story and find joy in everyday moments. Get comfortable, stay curious, and let's explore together. Unscripted, unapologetic, and unstoppable. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Life Unscripted Podcast, where we dig into real stories, raw truths, and radical courage. I'm your host, Rosabel Soulful, and today's guest is someone whose story will not only move you, but might shift something inside you. She's a licensed massage therapist, master body worker, and trauma healing life coach with over 2 decades of experience. She worked with professional athletes, spoken on stage, and most importantly, she has helped people break through trauma and pain, and of course, to access healing and wholeness. Please welcome Cari Rickabaugh to this show. Hello, Cari. How are you?
I am so good, Rosabel. Thank you so much for allowing me to be on the show.
I'm really excited for you to be here. And so, again, thank you. And I know this is going to be a powerful conversation. I want to start at the heart of your story. You perhaps have shared, I'm sure, that you experienced 3 decades of abuse from your own family. And for a long time, you believed you were too broken to be helped. And that is such a heavy place to be. Can you tell us what life looked like for you in that season? What were you feeling and what kept you going?
Sure. Let me, if I can, let me tell you a little bit, let me tell you a little bit about how that abuse all kind of happened and how it worked within my brain. So I grew up in a very tumultuous and toxic household. We were actors outside, so we were the perfect family outside of the home. And then inside the home, it was not, but I don't remember abuse happening until about age 12. That's when I thought the shift happened for me, that life kind of went on a negative direction. And then for the next 30 years, all of this verbal, emotional, mental abuse from multiple different family members were happening. And I lived into it because that's the only role I knew how to play, because I didn't really have a personality. I went very dark. I kept hitting rock bottom, and finding my rock bottom had a basement. And so I just kept going lower and lower and got to a very scary place until this miracle happened. And this person came into my life and helped me be able to process it. Now, here's the interesting part is we worked for almost a year to work on that 30 years of trauma starting at age 12. And we got to a point where I felt like I could handle it well. I had released a lot of it. And then suddenly, through a series of events, the first 10 years of my life of even more horrific trauma that I had repressed at age 10 came back. And so my thought was, growing up throughout life, I thought you're given a great life or you're given a horrible life. I didn't think I could choose. And I thought had a horrible life. I just had to hold on and white knuckle it every day until I died. And I got to a point where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Then I started going through coaching, started learning different tools and techniques, got better. And then it nosedived again when those first 10 years came back, where I expected it to be more linear of everything's going to be tiptoeing through daisies and there's going to be rainbows and unicorns and all of this. And it wasn't that way. So it's been a long journey of learning to love who I am, learning to love, and then getting to a point where I'm like, more stuff comes back. I can still love myself because it was so difficult to survive. I didn't think that I could make a choice to carry all of the trauma that I had. I thought that I was just burdened with it. I lived very negatively of everything horrible happens to me and I can't change. And I don't know why I can't change. And this is just a horrible way to live. And it was the idea that I can actually make decisions that can change my life as possibilities that really started to shift things for me. I don't know if that totally answered your question.
And in a way, as you're talking, I'm also thinking it amazes me how trauma and how this experiences that we have shifted ours, they're so different for each one of us. And I was just thinking that because as you were sharing your part of your story, I was also thinking about my story with trauma and again, what causes, like, for example, you mentioned that you felt like you would go through a time where I guess things were getting, this is it, you're going to make it. And then you go back and kind of have like a regression, right?
Mhm.
And so it's very interesting. A lot to. In fact, I think I have a lot more questions for you on this because I still find myself puzzled in many, many ways about what causes people to experience trauma in different ways.
Yeah.
Let's say
Yeah.
that you could have the same, let's put the same situation. You can even have two brother and sister or two, you know, two brothers, and they're going living in the exact same environment, they're going through. I don't understand how one makes it and the other doesn't. And anyways, but it seems like you connected at that time what you call a miracle. Did you connect it with a life coach? Is that
So, technically, yes, this is a friend of mine that I had known for at that time about 24 years. And the miracle of it was I was just a day or two away from following through with my plan to not be alive anymore. And I get this random call from this friend that I had known for 24 years. And he said, I want you to talk to my friend who's a life coach. Now, at this point, I had already been to see 3 different therapists about 2, 3 years before. And as I started telling him my story of trauma starting when I was 12, all of them just said, oh, that's not that big of a deal. You'll be good in 12 weeks. And nothing was ever resolved. And after 3 months, they just kind of shooed me out the door. They're like, you're good, right? You're better. And I thought that's where the I'm too broken to be helped came in. And so when he called me and said, I want you to talk to this friend of mine who's a coach, I was like, I'm not going to invest again. He's not going to be able to help me. I'm too broken. And this friend, nobody knew that how depressed I really was. Nobody knew how low and what I had planned. And he just kept talking to me. And he was like, no, you need to promise me that you're going to talk to this friend of mine. You just talk to him 4 times. And to the point where I said, okay, I will talk to him 4 times just because I love you and I respect you, but it's not going to help. It's not going to change anything. And he was like, that's fine. I just want you to talk to him. And the creating of that is what kept me alive until that first appointment with the coach. And then working with that coach, I worked with him for 2.5 years and he brought me back. He helped me to be able to live again.
and how old were you then?
I was 45.
Oh wow. So from the 12-year-old until like you were 45, that wow. There's a long time, right? And in between that, did you see any counseling? Did you spoke with anyone about what's happening?
In my 20s, I did. And I'd see him for probably 6, 8 months and I'd get to a place where I felt better. But again, there was ongoing trauma that was still happening throughout all these years. And then, probably a decade later, I saw another one, I think that probably like 29 or 30. And then I didn't see one again because it's kind of like a lot of the hidden stuff kept coming to the surface. And I was too scared to go through the feelings, the memories to really dig into that for a while, which I know a lot of people do that too. It seems terrifying to go back and relive that stuff. And it is, but it's also so freeing to do that as well. And so when I got into probably about 41, 42, I was like, it's time. And I sought out 3 different therapists and all 3 of them didn't think my trauma was that bad and said after 12 weeks, they were like, you should be good. And just kind of were done with me. So I had sought help, but because there was this 10 years of forgotten trauma, that's what was really dictating how I lived my life. And there was 20 years where I really just felt stuck and I couldn't change anything about me. And it's because I had no idea that all of this other trauma was there. And that was really
Wow.
what was controlling me.
So you mentioned something about the trauma through the body, not just the mind, because a lot of times when we think about trauma, we're thinking something emotional. And yeah, I mean, we also think about trauma body, but we kind of see them, we kind of tend to separate them both. But it seems to me that you put them together. Can you explain us how is that and why it is so important to address the trauma through the body, not just the mind?
So there's a book out there and the author, the name escapes me, and it's The Body Keeps the Score.
Yes,
And
I've read that book. Yeah.
Yes. And it's so true. From my experience, and I think this kind of goes back and answers a little bit more of your previous question, which is how can there be two people who go through the same thing and have different experiences? And this is where the body holds it, is partly it's the experiences that you've had. So the truth that you've been given or that you believe of, this is how you're supposed to handle it. This isn't traumatic. So one person doesn't see this as trauma where another person does. I think a lot of it is just the way we're raised, the friends we have, the experiences we have that way. But for me, I started developing, when I was 20, I started developing seizures, and they couldn't ever find the cause of it. And it's very rare for an adult to start having seizures if there's not a brain tumor or head injury or didn't have them as a child, things like that. And then it progressed, and I had those for over 20 years. I started having autoimmune issues. I started having fibromyalgia. I had chronic fatigue. I had PCOS. I had and it was just, you're just unhealthy. And I was bedridden. I actually had to give up my massage practice for a few years because I was working from home and barely could go from my office to my bed. And I found, without even realizing it right away, that when I started healing the trauma, started working through the trauma, fibromyalgia started going away. The seizures quit happening. The chronic fatigue stopped happening. Like all of these things that in my body were weighing me down in terms of illnesses started going away. And I talked to one of my neurologists, and I had moved across the country. And so I had a new doctor, and the neurologist said, "Do you know what caused your seizures?" And I was like, "Trauma." And they said, "Absolutely." And they said, "You've been healing them." And I said, "Yeah." And I haven't had a seizure in almost 4 years, where I was having,
So let me ask you this. By any chance, did they diagnose you with something like psychogenic, non-epileptic seizures or anything like that?
no, because I had two different types of seizures. Some were grand mal and then some were partials. They were just my head and my right arm.
So they actually did EEG and they found that there were some, you were actually having, or okay. Because sometimes people have what is called psychogenic non-epileptic. So in other words, and you mentioned they do all kind. I mean, I work in neurology, right? And we do
Right.
all kinds of tests, and we check for everything, and we cannot find any visible cause per se, like something to explain it. So the next thing to say, well, but it's a little bit more complex than that. But
Yeah,
just to keep you on but those are real though. I mean, again,
absolutely.
it's very real for the person that goes through, not to be dismissed, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So
I mean, at first I mean, when I went to the ER the first time, they didn't believe because they did a CAT scan and didn't find anything. And then the second time, and nobody had witnessed it, so they didn't think that it was really a thing, and that had been a grand mal. And then the second time, somebody witnessed it. And so they took me back to the hospital and they did another CAT scan. They did an EEG, they did an MRI. They couldn't find anything. And then, but they could detect that there were little bits of, but they couldn't find out where they came from. And so it
right.
was just kind of like, you've got epilepsy and you just have to deal with it. And it was kind of the same mentality of, all these things keep happening to me and I just have to deal with them. I just have to carry them. I'm cursed almost in this regard. And it's when you start healing the mind, you can heal the body. And when you start healing the body, you can heal the mind. And when you heal them at the same time and you work on them at the same time, the changes are incredible.
That is amazing, and it is possible. It is possible. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I often forget my journey. I did experience something like, but I was 14. I experienced something like it. It wasn't per se the grand mal type of seizures with the myoclonic. It was more like I will lose, like it was kind of like a vertigo. They couldn't figure it out. Is it my ear? Is it? So they were like, well, there's some kind of central type of thing. It lasted for like 2 years. They put me on, of course, AEDs and whatnot, but it was related to the trauma I was going through with my mother, with so many things. But I made it. I mean, that went away after, like you say, doing a lot of inner work and a lot of healing. Again, when you heal the mind, then the body kind of follows, and vice versa
Yeah.
in a way. But yeah, but they do go together. And so tell me, what is your life now, after you go through all those changes? What is new for you right now?
Being on podcasts is one thing that is new. I didn't think that I would ever really be somebody who could share on a big stage anything, one-on-one with people, I was good. But when it came to groups bigger than maybe 10 or 15 people, I would really kind of cower back and be like, I'm not that important. I don't have a story to share. Nobody wants to hear what I have to say. Now I actually spoke at a conference in January in front of 250 people. And not only that, told this story. I mean, the memories of this first 10 years of my life, which was sexual trauma by a family member, it was something that only came back not even 2 years ago. And yet I've been able to dig deep enough because I had that year of learning techniques and things to do, practices to do. So when this other 10 years came back, I kind of knew what to do. It helped me to be able to share that story with other people. It helped me to be able to, I do mini podcasts in a Facebook group of 11,000 people. I just wrote a book. While I was in a book, I was asked to put my story as a chapter in an anthology, and that has gone out for the world to read. And this is such personal and vulnerable things that
Yes.
it was terrifying, but it's
Yes.
also part of my healing journey. And it's brought so much freedom to be able to help other people. I actually just got a call about an hour before we got on today where a friend of mine, my book was just released in February and a friend had bought 2 of them. And he called me and he goes, I want to share the story with you of who I'm giving this other one to. And he met this woman who's in her 70s and she's lived this difficult life. And where I was in my 40s is where she is in her 70s now. And he goes, I'm going to give this to her because your story and her story are so much alike. And I want her to know that she can heal. And I'm like, that's exactly why I speak about it, is so other people know that there is hope. But there's also physical things too. Like I started running. At one point in my life, I weighed over 400 pounds. Healing trauma has made, you know, reducing my weight so easy because so much of it I was holding was trauma. And some of my coping mechanisms were food. I hate running, but I have a foot issue right now. I have bone spurs and my podiatrist said, you can't run. And I'm just like, but I want to. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I really do want to run.
Yes.
I live right on Lake Michigan. I started cold plunging in the winter a year and a half ago and would just go out into the water, freezing cold. And I'm just like, this is so great because my body
Yes.
can handle it now. And it's a mental freedom, but it's a physical freedom as well.
Absolutely. A couple things I want to mention before I forget, because one makes reference on what you just said about the friend that called you. But before that, I want to say one of the things I've discovered ever since I've been doing podcasting is this is part, you just said it perfectly. This is part of our healing journey. The more we share, the more we get things out, it helps us. But not only helps us, it helps other people, and it's been an amazing thing. It has helped me tremendously to have this connections, to connect with you, to connect with others, whether the ones that are behind, listening, or it's just incredible. Now and then, you're right, I also have a book that talks about my story and story of trauma and all the things that you go through, but how you also, it's not just a story, it's not what happened, it's what we have done, what have come out of that, what we have become, better people, better persons, so many things, so many lessons learned and still yet to learn. And so a dear friend of mine actually called me today to tell me she read the book and she shared something very deeply personal with me. To have that kind of that's vulnerability right there. When you open your heart and you share your story, other people then start sharing, and that's where, believe me, that is where the healing begins. Because the moment we start bottling things up and putting things up, then again it reflects in our body. It tries to come out whatever ways it can, right?
Absolutely.
But as we live, and so I'm very thankful for it. So what you said, it's incredible, it's amazing. And I'm just sharing everything I can with others, and the amount of people I come across with that they said, how did you know, I was going through this, how did you know I was going through some sort of a tragedy, or like going through this difficult time. I mean, we're human, right? And we go through difficult times. So
Yeah.
circumstances, call it divine power, but it's just amazing.
Do you know one thing I love, if I can really quick, it's part of the reason why
Yes.
I ended up getting into coaching is because this person who I coached with for 2.5 years, from the get-go, he told me some of the stuff that he's going through. I had no idea who this guy was. He was a friend of a friend, but he said, these are some of the things that I've gone through in my life and that I've struggled with. And doing that gave me permission to speak about my things in a space where I had never felt like I could before. And so that's a lot of my coaching is, I will tell you right off the bat, I'm not trauma informed, I'm trauma lived. And
Yes.
this is what I've been through. And so know that this is a safe space and you're not going to be judged. And I've gotten through it. And I'm no better than anybody on the street. And if I can get through it, you can get through it too.
Yes, exactly. That is absolutely true. Another thing, and I'm very honest about my journey. And one of the part of my journey is that I'm still trying to discover. I'm still looking. For example, I'm still puzzled. There's certain things, and I'm talking positive. Positive things, positive thoughts that I'm still asking myself, where did that came from? Because just like you have implanted negative emotions, negative thoughts that lead you one way, there's also some positive. So there are certain things that have carried me through in a very positive way, but I still have not been able, like, who told me that? Who told me to act this way? Why? Especially because in my case, my journey, well, actually, kind of like yours, before you met that coach, it was a solo journey. Mine was also very solo. I don't know if you have any brothers, sisters. I lost my mother when I was 17, and I don't have any brothers or sisters. So I grew up in Colombia, South America. It was, again, a very solo journey. My mom was very, very busy. My mom and my dad got divorced. So I have a very, and then it's my mother, beautiful, beautiful woman, but she has her baggage. She has her own issues, and I had to grow up very, very quick because in a way I was the adult in the house. I felt the weight of having to carry her. And so I don't know if that's what or who taught me to be that person, to be able to carry her. And then unfortunately, she ended up passing away because apparently she committed suicide. So very, very even more difficult, to and then try to look back. But I don't know if it's because I've been so busy trying to rebuild myself and becoming me, and just keeping on going, that very not so often I look back and said, how did I do that? It's amazing. And I find myself here like talking, and that's what I say every guest that I comment into this space. I feel like I find a little bit of me in them, like a story, like a piece, it's just like, yeah, somehow I can relate to you. I've been there. There's some, so it is incredible. But again, it starts by opening our heart and being vulnerable. It's not easy, but that's how it starts.
Exactly. When I spoke at this conference in January, there were 4 women over the next day and a half after I spoke that came up to me and just wrapped their arms around me and were crying. And each of them said, I have never met anybody who's had a childhood like I had. And I just looked them square in the eye and I said, yeah, you have. You just don't know because we're taught not to talk about it. And so we do carry it alone. We carry it solo, and we don't know what to do with it because we haven't been taught, and we're just trying to figure it out as we go. And there's so many people out there who, it's like this woman that my friend called me about. She's in her 70s and did not know that there's other people out there who've experienced things similar to her. And this book that I was in as an anthology, there were 13 authors, and the subtitle of it is Unlocking Your Hidden Potential. And every story in there by every author from around the world is all about these stories of triumph, of overcoming death of loved ones, or been given their own death sentence, or losing a parent, or something like that. Something that everybody is going through, and everybody can relate to something. I mean, we all have our own type of tragedy and our trauma. And what's, like you said at the very beginning, what's trauma to one person isn't necessarily trauma to another. But if you've experienced any type of trauma, then you can understand what other people are going through.
Yes. And it also teaches to be compassionate. To be
Uh-huh.
compassionate and to, again, but you are right. If we have any, and I was one of my guests said something. We, all of us, if you're a human being, you have experienced some kind of trauma, because the moment we as babies we come through the birth canal, that is trauma right there.
Very
There is
traumatic.
trauma. I mean, it's part of life. And so again, it's how we deal with it. So I want to ask you, for someone listening who is perhaps curious about what it will be like working with you, what does a typical session with you looks like? Like, can you describe the process?
Kind of. So I've been a massage therapist for over 20 years, right? And along with that, I learned a lot of energy work. So, and the ones I liked the best were a lot of craniosacral work and a lot of acupressure, right? So it's a lot of energy, moving energy around. With that, I learned somatic work. And then through my coach, I've learned neurolinguistic programming. And my coach had a very unorthodox method of doing neurolinguistic programming. If anybody knows what EMDR is, it's a very
Yes.
similar thing, except you don't have the lights or the bar or whatever
Yes.
movement there is. But it's a very similar concept. And so I integrate all of those things. If they're here locally by me, I'll do massage and coaching and energy work all in one session. But most of my clients are around the world and they're over Zoom. And what we do is we go deep and we do it depending on what the energy calls. And sometimes it seems really weird. The guy I worked with the first time, I thought he was crazy when he started. He's like, visualize, we're in a field and tulips and I'm like, what? Because I was expecting therapy. I was expecting to just talk to him. And
Yes.
then after we got done with that session, I was sobbing and I'm like, there is something different. Like it's different. So we're going to go deep, but we're not going to go deep super fast. But we're going to get down to the nitty gritty. We're not going to put a band-aid on a broken leg and say, oh, you have depression. It's because you had this heartache and that's it. We do a lot of, how should I explain it? You go into your body and you do a lot of feeling. And you feel where things are. You feel if it's in an organ. You feel if it's a shape. You feel if it's what kind of texture it is. Is it bright? Is it 3D? Is it flat? Is it, does it hurt? Is it numb? We go into explore the feelings and the energy and the emotions. And then the talking comes with that. And so it's a hybrid. We could be doing somatic practices to let it go. It just really like to work intuitively. And so whatever the energy calls me of this person just needs to be heard. So just sit back and let them talk. Or no, we need to get up and jump around or whatever's going on. So it's deep sessions, but it's hard to give you just like because every person is different. Every person holds their trauma
Yes.
different. So we have to relieve that trauma in different ways.
Yes, I am just so thankful for the time that we live in, that we are able to connect. We're able to have these conversations even when someone is, miles apart. I love telemedicine. It has helped tremendously, especially when it comes to mental health,
Mhm.
which we don't have a whole lot of mental health providers in our country. But I every time I get the opportunity, and when I get patients that say, "Well, I don't have time," or "Well, there is telemedicine. There are so many people out there that can help you. It doesn't have to be the. I mean, you have different providers." For so many different, just find what works with you or for you. But there is healing. Healing is available. We just have to take that step, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there is a life on the other side of your pain, of your trauma, of whatever you're holding. If the walls that you put up in front of yourself, and sometimes like me, I didn't even know why, you can break those down. And my
Absolutely.
motto that I've had this year is do it scared. And that's what I tell a lot of people is you're going to be terrified to get help because it's going to be different and you don't know what to expect. And you think you know what to expect. You think it's going to be hurtful. You think you're going to have to relive moment by moment. And that's not always the case. But if you do it scared the first time, it's not quite as scary to do something hard the second time. And it gets less and less. And it gets easier and easier. And the life that is on, like not that can be, that is on the other side of whatever you're being weighed down by is glorious and it's bright and it's more than you could ever imagine. A year ago, I could not imagine. I couldn't wrap my head around some of the things I'm doing now.
That
And
is amazing.
there's possibility for everybody to do anything. And it sounds so trite, but it is very true.
It is true. You have to go through to be able to. And what would you say to someone who right now feel like they have tried everything but they still feeling stuck?
Keep trying. You're going to find a person, or you're going to find people that will be, and you might sometimes have to go. It's like nannies. If you're getting a nanny, you have to interview a ton of them to find out which one
Yes.
works for you. And sometimes you have to employ multiple ones. If you're working with a coach or a therapist that it doesn't feel right, find somebody else.
Exactly.
Talk to your friends. There's internet groups, there's Facebook groups of coaches, and that all are there to help you. But just keep trying, and you will find someone or a tribe that will be able to help you.
Yes, absolutely. And so you have you have that new book, right?
Yes.
Where you're
Can I, can I
what
show
is it?
you?
What is the so one chapter, right? Oh wow, look at that Journey of Riches. So what is the name of the chapter that you're on?
So when I started writing it, and for most of the editorial process, it was too broken to be helped. And at the end, when I had that transition from this isn't about the trauma, this is about overcoming, it turned into because the subcategory or the subtitle is Unlock Your Hidden Potential. It was from hidden pain to hidden potential is what the title ended up being.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That is so amazing. And then you're also seeing clients, you're speaking up more. What's next for you?
So this mini podcast that I'm doing, that I do just in this Facebook group, I'm in not negotiations, I'm in discussion to put that out on other platforms. So it's going to be almost primarily coaches. It is people who have been in the industry a while, and it is people who have been on our group's podcast. And so that resource and the knowledge of that resource is going to be put on so many other platforms. I'm creating a YouTube page. I actually am starting into a leadership position with a group where we're going to start finding things that are free resources for people who, again, are stuck in multiple different ways, to be able to find those so that they can find somebody who will work with them and help them. I actually just spoke with the publisher of this book. This was just released in February, and he invited me to be on their next project that comes out in June. I don't think I'm going to do that, but we have agreed that we're going to work on another book in the future. So there's so much that's opening up, so much. I used to live every day, go from my apartment office to my bed, my apartment office to my bed. And I just want people to really hear and understand that they can get through. It doesn't matter what they have been through. It doesn't matter what they have done. It doesn't matter what they're holding on to. There is another side, and there is hope for healing, and they can create, like I am, whatever they want to do.
Absolutely. And I can sense the excitement in your voice, and I can relate to that because as I have also been working and doing what I'm doing and sharing and helping others and allowing others to help me, and let's put it this way, collaborate, doors just start opening. It's just like one thing adds to the next, and it's just again an amazing work, and you end up discovering another side of life that is not so obvious, perhaps that we take for granted. We perhaps tend to see the negativity. We tend to think, well, humans and all this, and again, because of the trauma, there's also that distrust that, but then when you start connecting with people that are, even if we're not necessarily thinking or have the same background, but we are moving towards the same goal, more moving, we have one goal, and that is to heal, to get better, to make ourselves whole again. That right there is very, very powerful. It
Mhm.
releases so much positivity into the world, into the light, into our lives. It's very tangible. It's something that I've started to see in more and more and more and more. I have so much to talk about that, and so many, many questions. Is there anything I have not asked you that you want to share with the public, with our listeners?
Not really. This is really the foundation of what I love to do. I mean, I have stories that I could tell you about how negative of a person I was and how, that's what I was creating with my language and with my thoughts. And that's what I received because that's all I could see was the negative part. And when you make a decision, I was actually just talking to somebody about this yesterday. When you make the decision to be happy, because it really is a choice,
Yes.
everything you do is a choice. So getting help is a choice. Healing is a choice. Being happy is a choice. We all can see proof of where we've failed or where we haven't done what we wanted, but we don't often look at where we have succeeded. We don't often look. I found these little bottles, like 8-10 ounce bottles of Martinelli, the little non-alcoholic sparkling drink. And I found those at my dollar store, and every couple of months I'll go buy a handful of them. And then every time there's even a small victory. Today I had a conversation with somebody where I put up a boundary, and boundaries are difficult for me. And I came home and I popped one open to remind myself and celebrate myself that, dude, even if it's little, there's the proof of the positive.
Yes.
There's the proof of the good. And you just have to stay with that. And
Yep.
it's possible.
It is. That's my main topic here. That's my book. I don't know. It's called, I have it right here. It's called The Courage to Succeed. I feel that everybody has the courage that it takes. Everybody has the courage. You just have to learn how to unleash it and get it to your full potential. Cari, there's so much more that honestly I would like to talk with you, but in so many ways. But before I wanna first of all, I wanna thank you for the courage, for your truth, for the light that you bring to people's lives. I think you're doing an incredible work. I know so many of our listeners are going to want to connect with you after this. So for everyone tuning in, you can learn more about Cari's work at your website, right? ResilienceMindAndBodyCoaching.com. They can also find you. What can our listeners find you on social media?
So I am on Facebook. You can find me under my name. You can also find me under the Resilience Mind and Body Coaching. I'm on Instagram. I'm on YouTube, which is building. I'm on TikTok. That's a newer creation for me as well. And so, yeah, you can find me on any of those platforms.
Awesome. And for sure, also get the story in the book, right? A Journey to
Look, yep.
Riches.
A Journey of Riches, and this is the 39th one in the Journey of Riches series. So this is Unlocking Your Hidden Potential, and these are the 13 authors. Or you can even just email me at resilienceMindAndBodyCoaching@outlook.com.
That is so awesome. Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, Gary, for sharing your truth with us. I hope you can come back here because there are so many topics. And sometimes what I would like to do is perhaps pick up one topic and kind of dig deep into it. I'm very interested in speaking or learning a whole lot more about trauma, perhaps even PTSD and all those things. But thank you again. Thank you for the opportunity, and we'll stay in touch, okay?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, my dear. I'd love to come back.
Thank you. And for everyone out there listening, don't forget to subscribe, share this episode, and let's keep lifting each other up. So until next time, keep rewriting your story one brave word at a time. Goodbye. Check out my book, The Courage to Succeed, A True American Dream. It is available now on Amazon and also Barnes & Noble. This is a story of resilience, grit, and what it really means to chase your dreams, even when the odds are stacked against you. If you ever face fear, failure, or uncertainty, this book will meet you right there and remind you that courage always has a voice. Just search The Courage to Succeed, A True American Dream by Rosabel on Amazon, or head to the link in the show notes because your dream is worth it and your courage can take you there.